I want to introduce everyone to Kendrick Wilson. Kendrick, thank you so much for being here and talking to us about your experience here at the schoolhouse.
Okay, you're welcome.
Great, sure thing. So, when you come into the schoolhouse now, as an adult, what are your thoughts? Do you think about school when you were here? Do you think about what it was like to be here? Does it make you think back to
Oh
then?
yeah, somewhat.
So what are those memories like for you? Are they positive? Are they?
I don't think that any of our families had much money, but we had a good childhood. At least I did. I think the rest did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And was school a happy place for you to come?
Yeah. Yes, it was.
It was. What did you like best about coming in here each day?
Oh, I don't know. Really, I don't know if I can answer that.
No.
But we
Was
had
it
a
the
good
kids? Was it seeing the kids? Did it feel sort of like a family, if you will?
Yeah,
when you
more or
came
less.
here?
And oh, we'd get mad off and on, but nothing serious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is there one memory about the schoolhouse that stands out in your mind? Do you have one?
No,
any
not really.
particular
I
memory?
mean, I got a lot of memories, but no, I don't know.
Not one specific, not one specific event that stands out to you. So how many years did you attend here?
8.
You were here for all 8. So
4 downstairs and 4 up.
4 up. And how many teachers did you have while you were attending? Do you remember what years were you here? Do you remember?
I forget the calendar days, but no, I had Miss Sproul was my first teacher, and that was the first year she taught. And she had long fingernails, and as a little kid, first year at school, I thought they were about that long.
Yeah.
Kind of fascinated me.
Yeah.
And I could easily walk to school. And we used to walk through Tom Steer's junkyard and play in the cars, of course.
That's what you did on your way to school?
And the way back.
And the way back?
Oh, not all the time, but some.
Yeah. So you came here. So how long of a walk was that for you?
Oh, a very short walk. 2 houses from the firehouse on on the same side of the road.
Okay.
The firehouse went there then. There was a building there that belonged to the Oddfellows Lodge.
Yeah. Is that so? The Oddfellows Lodge that's there today is different?
Yes, but the building I'm speaking of was somewhere near the firehouse.
I see. I see.
Not right there, but somewhere there.
Yeah. Do you remember any more of your teachers? So Miss Sproul was your first teacher.
Well, Miss Sproul, and then I had Mr. Chief. He was a retired teacher. And he was into his 80s and hard to hear him. So I was just telling him downstairs that somebody would come to the door and they'd knock on one of the doors, or he wouldn't hear it. So the kids would say, "Someone's at the door." So chances is he'd go to the wrong door. They'd say the wrong door, then he'd go to the other door, and then whoever was knocking on that door would go to the other door. So sometimes it was a little while before the visit got through.
Very funny. Do you remember any other teachers?
Yes, the last teacher was Miss Uran. And she boarded with one of the other teachers named Ellen Francis and Edwin. They lived almost directly across the road. And she boarded with them.
I see.
And
no, finish.
She used to keep me after school a lot.
Oh.
And so one time, because we'd go down after school sometimes and skate on the ice pond down there, and we'd roll old tires from Tom's junkyard down there, and we'd burn those, and then we'd dip cat o' nine tails in kerosene and light those, play prisoner's base or hockey. And sometimes I'd go home all covered in black soot from the tires.
From the tire burning.
Yeah. But anyway, Miss Sproul quite often kept me after school. I'm not sure why, but Billy Crook once said, "Miss Sproul," not Miss Sproul, Miss Uran, excuse me. Miss Uran, if Kendrick doesn't do anything, would you let him out to play hockey with us?
So it was most days they were expecting you were going to be kept behind.
Yes, and I don't think I was that unruly, so I don't know what to make of it, really.
So I thought maybe we'd start, and one more question about your teacher. Do you remember your teachers, like what their demeanor was like? Were they friendly? Were they strict? How were they toward you and the students?
Well, they were fairly strict, but not real strict.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Did they?
I think, Hazel Gifford, I did have her too, mm-hmm. and she was quite strict, but a good teacher.
Yeah, mm-hmm. Okay.
She had 2 daughters that went here to school.
Oh, so they were classmates of yours. Interesting. So I thought maybe we would walk through a little bit like a typical day. And we're trying to get a little bit of an understanding too of what life was like for you a little bit outside of school. So, so imagine it's a typical day and you wake up, you get out of bed and you get yourself dressed. So what did you wear to school? Did they have a dress code? Or?
No.
So what kind of clothes could you just wear,
Just whatever was available and
clean.
Warm or cool, whichever the season was.
Yeah. Okay. So then you had breakfast before you came to school?
Yes.
So what was a typical breakfast like, and maybe what was your favorite thing for breakfast?
Oh, bacon and eggs, but usually it was oatmeal.
So, so was oatmeal what you had most mornings before school?
Well, quite often, yeah.
And bacon and
juice
eggs?
Sometimes.
And juice. And bacon and eggs were?
Once in a while.
Once in a while, so for maybe weekends or?
Yeah, of course my mother used eggs in cooking, so there were usually eggs in the house. Mm-hmm. Then I had hens for a while that Dad bought me.
Oh, you had hens at home?
Yeah, just a few though.
And
I built a ramshackle building for them. Mm-hmm. Fell off it once and drove a board, the end of a board, right up under my knee.
Oh, wow. Wow.
But it finally, I put salve on it and it finally come out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so these chickens that you had, so did you think of them as pets?
Well, somewhat. I had them all named. I had a bantam rooster. And Keith Lehman, who was in my class, right across the road, he had a Rhode Island red rooster, and they're quite a large bird.
Right.
But if he came across the road, my banty rooster, they could fly a little bit, it would drive right back. And then I had a banty hen, and just real small eggs, but I always ate those. But I had them named, I think it was a man in Waldoboro named Miller that my father got them from. So one was Miller, one was Brownie, and so forth and so on. Yeah.
And so they were laying hens, so you got to eat their eggs, you got to bring their eggs in. About how many did you have? How many chickens did you have? About
8 or 9, I guess.
8 or 9. Cool. That was great. And did you think that was fun?
Oh, yes.
It was fun. Were there any other family pets that you had?
Oh, I had a beagle hound for a while.
Yeah, as a family dog. And were there any other animals at your home?
No, well, early on, because Dad went fishing and was away from home a lot, but I think for a few years we did have a pig, and then my mother's Uncle Nash on the island, Vanda Murphy, would butcher it.
I see. So you had more than one pig the family would keep?
Well, only one at a time.
One at a time, yeah. And then after it was butchered, you'd get another pig.
And Dad had some pretty good guardians. If he wasn't home, I'd spade up the easiest place here and the easiest place there and have cucumbers and lettuce and stuff.
Oh, you did? You planted them yourself?
Yes. And then I used to pick blueberries and sell them. I'd go down in the colony and to the cottages. There was a man named Henry Chamberlain that owned all those cottages, and they'd just rent them out in the summer. And I'd pick blueberries and go down and sell them.
You sold them?
Didn't get a lot, of course, but some.
So you sold them to the summer people that were visiting down in the Chamberlain cottages. That's interesting. So Kendrick, I know you talked about you walked to school. Did you have any siblings when you grew up?
No, well, I had a younger sister. She was a class behind me. And my parents had a boy that died of some rare illness when he was only about 4, I guess, so I never saw him.
Yeah. And did you walk together to school with your sister?
Let me see. Yeah, some, but sometimes she was kind of slow and she wouldn't leave as early as I would.
I see. So did you leave early so you could raise a little trouble on the way, or have a little fun? I guess I should say, have a little fun on the way?
Well, probably. I don't know for sure now.
So you've arrived at school. Let's say you arrived on a day and you've come to school. So do you recall what time school started? Roughly.
I think 8, but I'm not sure.
8.
No.
And what would happen if you were late? Were you ever late to school?
Not very often, I don't believe, because I was so close.
Yeah, and so so you were never late, so you didn't see no one was disciplined or whatever for being late for school?
No, I don't recall.
Were kids mostly prompt?
Yeah, mostly.
Yeah. And so how did your day begin at school? So how did they get you all to gather into the school?
Well, if they had a bell that would ring.
Mm-hmm. So would anyone come in before the bell, or would you generally all just stay outside?
No, we'd stay outside.
You stayed outside?
Yeah, because sometimes we slid on the hill.
Oh, okay.
In the wintertime.
Ah.
Sometimes a sand truck would come, we wouldn't like that. But one of the kids had a double runner, mm-hmm. and that is a plank with an old-fashioned rigid sled under the rear, yep. And then in front there was the same type sled, only you had a bolt through the plank and so that it could be turned, and then there were 2 ropes, one on each side, and the board going to put your feet.
Yeah.
And so you could steer it.
Ah.
So there'd be about a half a dozen kids on it and push it off.
Oh, wow.
And then the other kids, which was usually, I would be one of them, we had the regular sleds that you could steer. Mm-hmm. And we'd run and slam them down on the road and try to overtake the double runner and ditch it.
So that's what you did before school while you were waiting for school to start?
Yeah, in the winter time. And then
yeah.
in dinner hour we would also. Mm-hmm. But then sometimes we would be a little late because the bell would ring and we'd have to get back to school. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
you came in, you would get to your seat when you heard the bell, you'd get to mm-hmm. your seat. Mm-hmm. And so how did the day begin? How do you recall? For instance, did you pledge the flag, or did you say prayers, or what was the day like when you began it?
Oh, well, we'd study a while and then we'd be asked questions, and mm-hmm. some kids was more likely to answer a question than others. Mm-hmm. Some would speak right up and others would kind of hold back. Mm-hmm.
Do you recall, did you say the Pledge of Allegiance? Do you remember doing that
Yes,
sort of
we
thing?
always did that.
You
yes.
did, and do you remember saying any prayer or singing the national anthem, for instance, or singing a song, or was there a moment of silence or any sort of thing like that when you started your day? Do you
Well,
recall?
there was something like that. I don't remember exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
We did practice for the Christmas pageant that would be in the white church.
Okay. So, for music, you mean singing? And
well, they had pageants where you dressed up like wise men and like that. Yeah.
So almost like a performance,
like
a play.
Christmas pageants, which they'd have the Christmas service at the church.
I see.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I see. So it was done for the service at the church, and mm-hmm. you guys would perform there.
Yes.
I see. Do you recall there being any musical instruments at school?
Well, there was a rhythm band, yes, mm-hmm. and that was Waldo Weatherby. I think he had invented something and had some money, and they didn't have children, so they had what they called a rhythm band.
I see.
And they was the teachers of this. They weren't teachers, but they were the music teachers.
Here at the school?
Yes, and they had 8th grade graduation classes over the Granite Hall, which we called the saloon, but I guess it actually was one, so, because we're thinking of cowboys shooting up the saloon, so yeah. We called it the saloon. It amused us, thinking of cowboys and Indians
right.
and saloons and
Right.
all that stuff.
So did you play in the
No, I didn't.
the band?
I didn't. But
You didn't.
William here did.
William, yes. William Smith.
Yeah.
We just spoke with him.
You know.
Yep. So can you picture the classroom, how it was arranged? Do you remember how it was arranged? Like where, do you remember where you sat?
No, I don't think it was the exact same place, because I was downstairs 4 years and upstairs 4 years. It just sat at a desk, but I don't have any particular memory of it.
Do you don't remember that? So so there were 4 grades in this classroom with you. So upstairs,
Yeah.
for instance, I believe were the older children.
Yes.
So grades, what was that, 5 through 8 upstairs? Is that
roughly
right?
that. Yes.
Yeah. So was it just arranged openly, or
Yes.
did the kids? Were
No,
you
it was-
arranged
it
by
was
grade
openly.
or anything?
No,
It was just open, but you sat in the same seat each day of a
Yes.
particular year.
Yeah.
And where did the teacher sit? Do you remember?
Yeah, the middle back there.
The middle back there. Okay. And so what was your favorite subject at school, Kendrick?
Oh, I don't know. It might have been later when I was in high school, but I always liked geography and history.
Geography and history. And how were the lessons conducted? So did she teach to the whole classroom, or did she teach, to small groups? Or do you remember how that might have?
Well, no, not really, because you had your books and some took home homework. I didn't very often, but once in a while. Because I still have a couple of geography books from, my mother went to school here briefly because her mother had consumption, TB. But they had their own schools for a long time because they had an argument about the Civil War. And so there was a couple of geography books that go way back.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah.
So were you ever responsible, so because, I'm only asking this because there were 4 grades in the same room, were you ever responsible for helping some of the younger students?
I don't remember that we were.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so was the classroom in general kind of quiet, or?
Yeah, but of course, like high school too, one kid would yank another's pigtail or poke her in the back with a pencil or something.
Yeah.
I got jabbed once with a lead pencil and a piece of lead is there still.
Yeah, wow. And
we'd have wrestling matches, of course. Outside, we'd have
wrestling matches. Yeah, that's what you did.
I was small for my age, but I was a little quicker than average, so I liked wrestling matches. I'm just not, I'm not talking being mad at anyone, just for fun.
Oh yeah, you would wrestle for fun as a sport. Yeah. So, how was discipline handled? So in general, would you say the classroom was generally pretty quiet and in control?
Yeah, pretty much.
And so when someone did act up, do you remember how the teacher might have handled that when someone behaved badly?
They spoke to them, and I don't remember being any big disciplinary problem.
No. So did kids generally have to maybe stand in the corner, or what was a punishment, if you will, like? Do you remember any?
Well, I remember I stayed after school for one period quite a bit. My last teacher, Miss Yu, ran.
Yeah. Yeah, but in general, so discipline wasn't a big thing in the classroom.
No, I don't think so. No.
And so were there report cards, Kendrick?
Yes,
Do you
it was.
recall? And
yes, it
so
was.
what were they like? And did you carry them home to your parents?
Yes.
You did.
Well, it'd be like on arithmetic A, and history A, and something else B, and something else
Did you get graded on things like conduct or?
Yes.
Yeah, you did. And did they keep track of if you were tardy and so forth?
Yes, but I didn't have a problem with that.
Good for you.
You know, Miss Duran kept me after school, but she was just the last teacher I had about every night. But I really don't know what my conduct marks was. I don't think they was as bad as
Yeah,
as bad as.
funny. Maybe she just secretly liked you a lot, Kendrick.
Well, if I'd been large for my age, or maybe.
Maybe she
But
just
I wasn't.
enjoyed your company.
I don't really know.
So did your parents ever have to come to school, like in general? So for instance, talking about contemporary times here, we, you know, there's parent-teacher conferences and the parents are often, you know, get to go to the school and speak with the teacher. Was that the case when you were in school here?
Oh, some parents did visit, yes.
Mm-hmm. And so, but did they have regularly scheduled meetings?
I don't know on that.
They didn't have like
I don't really know.
parent-teacher nights. So was it a rare sighting to see a parent at school?
Well, it wasn't rare, but it wasn't real common because all the teachers were local. But no, they weren't all. Mr. Chief and Miss Durant were, but most of the others were.
Mm-hmm. And how was lunch? How did you have lunch? How did lunch happen at school?
Well, it didn't. You brought your lunch, or I could just walk home with the lunch.
Is that
but
what
the
you
ones
did?
that had a longer walk
Yeah.
brought that lunch in a dinner bucket.
I see. And did you go home for lunch?
Yes, I did.
You did. How long was your lunch? How long did they give you?
I think it was an hour, but I'm not sure on that.
Yeah. Yep. And so, what time did your school day end? Do you recall?
No, gee, I don't. It's probably mid-afternoon or long in there somewhere.
Yeah.
But no, I don't remember the time.
Okay, so you would leave school, and did you have homework? I know you spoke a little bit.
Well, you did, but I seldom took any. I seldom took any homework in grammar school or in high school.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because you weren't asked to. You didn't need to.
Well,
take
it
home.
depended on how you were doing.
Yeah.
If you were not keeping up, then they probably would want you to do homework.
I see.
But I pretty well kept up in everything, in grammar school and in
I
high
understand.
school.
Yeah, so you really only got homework if they thought you needed extra work at things.
That's how I recall, yes.
Interesting. So is there anything that I haven't asked you about school that you'd like to say? Have I sparked a memory that you might want to speak to that I haven't asked about?
No, I guess not.
So you would leave the school and you would go home. So what did you do after school? What did you do? Did you have chores?
Yes, some chores. Well, like I say, I had a few hands, and then I'd help mowing the lawn and bringing wood in if we were burning wood, which we didn't always do.
No, please.
No, I
Okay.
didn't.
And so those were your chores. Did you play any kind of games? I know you spoke a bit about, so you would, after school, did you go home, do your chores, and then go do some fun things? Or did you do your fun things and then do your chores?
Oh, I don't remember exactly.
You weren't committed to going home first. You just, so you said you would leave school often and head out with some of your friends from school?
Oh, yes.
So
Yeah.
what kinds of games, I know you spoke a little bit about them, what kinds of games did you play? Did you ever play baseball, for instance?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you would get a team together?
Yeah, and then we had the Scouts. The church sponsored the Boy Scouts, and I belonged to that.
You belonged to the Boy Scouts. So were there...
The Lion Patrol, the Lion Patrol and the Tiger Patrol.
That's what they called them?
Yeah.
The Lion Patrol. So
Well, there were different ones. That's what we happened to have.
Yeah. And were there a lot of kids in Scouts with you?
Yeah, quite a few.
Yeah. And who ran the Scouts? Was it just local parents?
Yes, it was a scoutmaster and assistant scoutmaster, and then the scoutmaster quit, and the assistant scoutmaster was a man named Floyd Poland, who was a cripple, and so we pretty much went off on the hikes on our own.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when school was out, like for the summer, how did you spend your summertime?
Well, I suppose when I was in the lower grade, just playing around the house, and out in the yard and like that. But then when I got older, as I say, I'd pick blueberries and sell them. And then along the last of grammar school, we'd build little carts and collect junk and sell it to Tom Sears Junkyard. So that's when the Second World War was going on.
Yeah, so I wanted to talk with you a little bit about that. How did you notice that life was different when the war was on?
Well, you're supposed to keep your windows, you know, and then they had rationing.
Keep your windows, what?
Well, covered.
Covered?
So the light wouldn't be shining.
Oh, so I'm not sure I'm familiar with that. So you had to cover all of the windows in your house?
Yes, so the light wouldn't get out.
The light wouldn't get out of your home. Was that?
And then you had, then you had rationing. I think most everything was rationed, butter, meat, and gas was rationed. And so they had stamps on buying gas. And some fishermen that weren't in the service, perhaps they were a little older, they would get more stamps.
Oh, I see.
And so...
So they did take your profession into account
yes,
when they were doing the rationing.
So if they had plenty of stamps, and people, of course, wanted stamps to buy gas, why, there might be a gas station like Hilltop, that if people had stamps, they wouldn't have to pay for the gas. They'd just give them some stamps, and then they'd sell stamps to customers. Of course, it wasn't legal, but that's what happened.
Yeah, that's how people managed to get by. So your family experienced rationing.
Yes.
And so was it difficult to get, so in general, was it hard to get food during the time, or was it just certain things that
Certain things was you could only get, you know, you'd have food stamps and only get so much. And then they had margarine, which they called nut butter for some reason, and it looked like lard, but then there was an additive, orange or pink additive, and you mixed it up, and then it did look like real butter. Oh,
I see. So they tried to fancy up.
There was a couple on Loud's Island that they had vegetable gardens and cows, and they used to make butter, and they'd bring it off to mainland and sell it house to house. My mother used to buy it. It was really good butter.
And did you need ration stamps to buy that, or
no?
No, so it was just local people. So you got really good butter.
Yes.
Even though it was rationed. Did you have a vegetable garden at your house?
Yes, it did. If it worked out right, you know, because I say he went fishing on the drag, as I was saying. He would plan to have new potatoes and peas on the 4th. And sometimes he did. But I would plant things, but I'd just go around with a spade and dig up what was the easiest to dig up and plant stuff.
Yeah.
Green beans, lettuce, cucumbers, and so forth.
Yeah. Was there...
And squash, we had a dump down back by a ledge, and sometimes squash got thrown away, and then they'd grow by itself, but usually they dried the seeds and kept them for the next year.
Interesting. And could you buy vegetables from other families here, like similar to the way you got that butter?
Yeah.
So if your garden didn't work out, so how did you get food how did your family get food for your dinners?
Well, there were 2 stores, Art Del Bryant and Bert Steer, and sometimes they'd pay someone for gas and go up to Scotty or Waldoboro and get things. Eddie Poland, my mother's cousin, had a Chevrolet convertible, a rumble seat. And he sometimes would take my mother shopping to Waldoboro, Damariscotta, and Barbara and I'd sat in the rumble seat. We really enjoyed that.
That's your
Sitting in that rumble seat.
And Barbara is one of your siblings?
It's my younger
sister.
sister, yes.
Great. So you had a rumble seat ride.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. So how often would you say they would go to the supermarket?
Well, I don't think it was any particular time.
Yeah. Was it a weekly trip sometimes, or did you get to go just monthly?
No, just more hit or miss, I guess.
More hit or miss. So it isn't like today where we go anytime we want.
Yeah, there wasn't much money, of course, back then, but things weren't very high.
Right.
If you had very much money, you could buy quite a lot.
Yeah.
But no, very few had much of any money.
So how did the arrival of the summer people?
What's that?
How did the arrival of summer people affect your life up here? When the people used to come to the Chamberlain colony, how did that affect you?
Well, I don't know that it affected me directly, except for I sold blueberries down through there. And but there was a lot of the summer people weren't that, they could afford to come here, but I don't think they were great big spenders. Heidi Carter and Artel Bryant had the store, and Heidi said that some of them arrived with a clean white shirt and a $5 bill, and they left with they left the same way.
They left the same way. So how would they get food and things like that while they were here?
Well, they'd have to go to the local stores, of course.
Yeah, but they didn't spend much, is what he was saying. They weren't extravagant. Yeah. So was that market right here in the village, the one you're speaking of?
Oh yeah, Artel's was right over there, and Burt's was down by the square, just beyond it on the left.
So you could just walk to the grocery store if you needed to? Did you often have to do that for your mom?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Did they send you to the
Dad,
store?
if he was home, he smoked Lucky Strikes, so I would get those for him because they didn't say anything back then.
Yeah.
Of course, I guess it was against the law, but they didn't enforce it or anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, the storekeeper would know what your father smoked anyway.
Right. It was a small world here, a small community, so everyone knew everyone.
But I don't think any of but some summer kids, with the exception of some summer kids, none of my playmates in grammar school had any. I don't think their parents had much money. I wasn't, it didn't affect me because I wasn't, my parents weren't real poor, so we had a roof over our head and enough to eat.
Yep. So what were meals like at your house? So what was a typical dinner?
Well, there was more vegetables and, that would not only be the baked fish or whatever, but there usually would be potatoes and 2-3 different vegetables, like green beans or carrots or whatever. And my mother canned things too.
Oh, she did? Yeah. Was there dessert? How often would you have something like a dessert?
Oh, quite often. Blueberry cake or blueberry pie. We'd go on the island and my mother's cousin had what had been a farm, and there were a lot of blueberries there, and my sister wouldn't pick much because she was younger, but I'd pick a lot, and my mother would, and so then my mother would can those blueberries, and then in the winter make blueberry cake, blueberry pie, and sometimes probably things were a little tight because I can remember some suppers just having blueberry sauce for supper, but it tasted real good. I wouldn't mind having some now. Yeah,
I wouldn't mind having some now. Yeah. So Kendrick, you still live here in the village.
Yes, I
What
do.
keeps you here? What do you like about being here?
Well, I don't know. I was away from home quite a bit, actually. When I was a teenager, I was in Aroostook County picking up potatoes, and I really liked that. And, you know, for the short time, you got paid for so much a barrel, but I enjoyed doing that.
So I'm going to stop you there because I would love to ask this. So was your school, was school disrupted at all for you guys around the potato farming? Did you have to go off and help people with that?
Well, the local school was out while they were picking potatoes. So the kids picked potatoes.
That's what you did. So school, there would be, what, a week?
Oh, no, longer than that.
A few weeks
Yeah.
when school was not in session?
Not in Aroostook County.
Oh, I meant here. Was
Oh,
this
the
school
school
ever,
was in session
was this
here, yeah.
school ever interrupted?
No.
No. You weren't affected by the
No,
potato.
after I graduated.
Yes.
Yeah, when I was about 17, I
Yep.
went up to Aroostook County and got a chance to pick up potatoes and board at a farm. Mm-hmm. And then the farmer got his crop in and got me a chance to go to the next door farm and pick up potatoes there. And I'd start out with 4 shirts on. One might be a sleeves cut off or whatever it might be. And when you get through, I'd walk across the field picking up my shirts because I'd have them all off before the day was over.
Yeah.
Just a t-shirt.
Right. Oh, interesting.
But no, I enjoyed, but I've always been going to go back, but I never did.
So you did that just for a few years. You left here.
Just once.
Just once.
Yeah.
You went up
And then
there.
when I turned 18, I went down to Florida and got a job in a hotel for the winter. And
Yeah.
then I joined the Navy.
You did.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And a whole bunch of us did here in Round Pond. And they had a going away time for us at the Oddfellows Hall.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So it was just a send-off for all of you. Yeah.
Yeah.
How many of you went?
Oh, I don't remember now, probably 8 or 10. In
Yeah.
South Bristol, there was about that number went.
Right.
And they were at Newport when we got there.
Yeah.
So in other words, they joined 2-3 weeks before we did.
And but you still come back to Round Pond all the time. Each time.
Well,
you
when
go
I got
back.
out of the Navy, I came back, and then I went to
Yeah.
Virginia and worked for Virginia Electric Power Company for the winter, and then I came back to Maine.
Yeah. But you're here, and you obviously like village life.
Oh, yeah, I guess so.
What is it about it that you like?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe it's laziness.
Laziness.
On my part. that is.
Leisureliness. We'll call it leisureliness.
Okay.